Rich man, he left his wife believing she was infertile. For years on, he finds twins. Clara, darling, are you ready? Jonathan called out, his deep voice echoing through the spacious living room adorned with modern art pieces. Clara's melodic voice drifted from the bedroom. Just a moment, love. I'm putting on the finishing touches. Jonathan smiled to himself, his heart swelling with affection. Even after 5 years of marriage, Clara still took his breath away. As he poured himself a glass of scotch, he marveled at how fortunate he was. A successful business, a beautiful home, and a wife who was not only stunningly gorgeous but also incredibly talented. Moments later, Clara emerged, a vision in a flowing emerald gown that accentuated her lithe figure. Her auburn hair cascaded in soft waves around her shoulders, and her green eyes sparkled with excitement. You look absolutely radiant, Jonathan breathed, setting down his glass to take her hands in his. Clara's cheeks flushed with pleasure. Thank you, darling. I'm so excited about tonight's gallery opening. It feels like all our dreams are coming true. As Jonathan gazed into his wife's eyes, he felt a familiar pang of longing. There was just one dream they hadn't yet achieved, a child of their own. But tonight wasn't about that. Tonight was about celebrating Clara's artistic triumph. Shall we? Jonathan offered his arm, pushing away the melancholy thoughts. Clara nodded, her smile bright but with a hint of something else. Hope, perhaps, or a touch of sadness. Let's go show the world what we've built together. As they stepped into the elevator, the couple presented a picture of perfection. Little did they know that their seemingly flawless life was about to face its greatest test, one that would challenge the very foundation of their love and push them to their limits. The elevator doors closed, carrying Jonathan and Clara towards an evening of celebration, blissfully unaware of the storms that lay ahead. Their story of love, loss, and redemption was just beginning, ready to unfold in ways they could never have imagined. Clara stood in the bathroom, staring at the array of fertility medications lined up on the counter. Her hand trembled as she reached for the first pill. "Jonathan?" she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, darling?" he replied, appearing in the doorway, his tie loosened and a look of concern etching his features. I don't know if I can do this anymore," Clara confessed, her eyes welling with tears. "It's been 2 years of treatments, and still nothing. I feel like I'm failing us." Jonathan crossed the room in 2 strides, enveloping Clara in his arms. "You could never fail me," he murmured into her hair. But even as he spoke the words, a flicker of doubt crossed his face, unseen by Clara. Clara pulled back, searching his eyes. "But what if it never happens? What if we're meant to be just us two?" Jonathan swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Then we'll face that together. But let's not give up hope just yet. We have that appointment with Dr. Ferris next week. Remember?" Clara nodded, wiping away a stray tear. "I remember. I see how you look at children in the park, Jonathan. I know how much you want this. I want you, Clara. Everything else is secondary," Jonathan assured her, but the words felt hollow even to his own ears. As they climbed into bed that night, the silence between them was heavy with unspoken fears and desires. Clara curled into Jonathan's side, seeking comfort in his warmth. He held her close, his mind racing with thoughts he dared not voice. "What if it's me?" Clara whispered into the darkness. "What if I'm the reason we can't have a baby?" Jonathan's grip tightened around her. "Then we'll explore other options. Adoption, surrogacy. There are always possibilities." But as the night wore on and Clara's breathing evened out in sleep, Jonathan lay awake, his own doubts gnawing at him. He loved Clara with every fiber of his being, but the yearning for a child of his own blood was becoming an obsession he couldn't shake. Little did they know, their journey was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would test the very limits of their love and commitment. As the city lights twinkled outside their window, fate was already setting in motion a series of events that would change their lives forever. Clara's voice trembled as she broke the quiet. "Whatever happens, we're in this together, right?" Jonathan squeezed her hand, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Always, my love. The door opened, and Dr. Ferris entered, her face a mask of professional neutrality. She sat down across from them, placing a folder on her desk. Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, she began, her tone gentle but serious. I've reviewed all your tests thoroughly. Clara leaned forward, her heart pounding. And Dr. Ferris took a deep breath. I'm afraid the news isn't what we hoped for. Clara, your tests indicate a condition called premature ovarian failure. This means that I can't have children, Clara finished, her voice barely audible. The doctor nodded solemnly. The chances are extremely low, I'm afraid. There are still options we can discuss, such as egg donation or adoption, but natural conception would be highly unlikely. Jonathan sat frozen, his mind reeling. He heard Clara's soft sobs beside him, but he felt oddly detached, as if watching the scene from outside his body. Jonathan! Clara's voice broke through his haze. Please, say something. He turned to her, seeing the pain and fear in her tear-filled eyes. A part of him wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would all be okay. But another part, a part he was ashamed to acknowledge, felt a surge of bitter disappointment. I need some air, he muttered, standing abruptly. Excuse me. Ignoring Clara's pleas and Dr. Ferris's concerned look, Jonathan strode out of the office. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall, his breath coming in short gasps. The dream of having a child, of continuing his legacy, seemed to crumble before his eyes. Back in the office, Clara hugged herself tightly, feeling more alone than ever. He blames me, she whispered. He'll never forgive me for this. Dr. Ferris moved to sit beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Give him time, Clara. This is a shock for both of you. There are still options to explore if you want to become parents. But Clara barely heard her. All she could think about was the look in Jonathan's eyes before he left. A mixture of disappointment and something that looked terrifyingly like resentment. Outside, Jonathan paced the parking lot, his mind in turmoil. He loved Clara, but the prospect of a childless future filled him with dread. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the asphalt, he made a decision that would set in motion a chain of events he could never have foreseen. Little did either of them know, fate had a twisted plan in store, one that would test the very foundations of their love and challenge everything they thought they knew about each other and themselves. One evening, as the city lights twinkled outside their window, Clara decided she couldn't bear the silence any longer. She found Jonathan in his home office, hunched over a stack of documents. Jonathan, she said softly, her voice quavering, we need to talk. He looked up, his face etched with fatigue and something darker, resentment. About what, Clara? What is there to say? Clara's heart clenched at his tone. About us. About our future. You've barely spoken to me in weeks. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his disheveled hair. I'm working, Clara. Someone has to keep this family afloat. Family? Clara's voice cracked. Is that what we still are? A flicker of guilt crossed Jonathan's face, quickly replaced by frustration. What do you want from me, Clara? To pretend everything's fine? That my dreams haven't been shattered? Your dreams? Clara's eyes flashed with hurt and anger. What about my dreams, Jonathan? Do you think I don't want children too? That I don't blame myself every single day? Jonathan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I can't do this right now. I have a conference call in 10 minutes. As he brushed past her, Clara grabbed his arm. Please, Jonathan, don't shut me out. We can get through this together. We can look into adoption? Or adoption? Jonathan scoffed, pulling away. It's not the same, Clara. You know that. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and poisonous. Clara stumbled back as if she'd been slapped, tears welling in her eyes. So that's it, she whispered. Our love isn't enough anymore? Jonathan's face softened for a moment, a glimpse of the man she'd fallen in love with shining through. But just as quickly, the wall came back up, I need time, Clara. I need space. As he turned away, heading for the door, Clara felt something inside her break. If you walk out that door, Jonathan, she called after him, her voice trembling, I'm not sure what you'll be coming back to. Jonathan paused, his hand on the doorknob. For a heartbeat, Clara thought he might turn back, might choose her over his pain and disappointment. But then he was gone, the sound of the front door closing echoing through the empty apartment. Clara sank to the floor, sobs racking her body. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace, oblivious to the fracturing of two hearts within its midst. As the night deepened, so did the chasm between Clara and Jonathan, a gulf that seemed increasingly impossible to bridge. Little did they know, life was about to throw them a curveball that would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, forgiveness, and the true meaning of family. One particularly gloomy afternoon, Clara found herself staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the hollow-eyed woman looking back at her. With trembling hands, she reached for her phone and dialed a number she'd been avoiding for weeks. Hello, Clara? The warm, familiar voice of her therapist, Dr. Amelia Sanders, answered on the second ring. Amelia, Clara's voice cracked. I think I need help. I'm here, Clara. Can you tell me what's going on? The dam broke, and Clara's words tumbled out in a rush of tears and anguish. Everything's falling apart. Jonathan, he can barely look at me. I feel like I'm drowning, Amelia. Like I'm not even a person anymore. Just a broken incubator. Dr. Sanders' voice was gentle but firm. Clara, listen to me. You are so much more than your ability to have children. Your worth isn't defined by that. But what if it is to Jonathan? Clara whispered, voicing her deepest fear. Then that's Jonathan's issue to work through, not yours, Dr. Sanders replied. Clara, I think it's time we schedule some sessions. Not just for you, but for both you and Jonathan if he's willing. This is a grief you both need to process. Clara nodded, forgetting for a moment that Amelia couldn't see her. Okay, she murmured. I'll try to talk to him about it. After ending the call, Clara felt a small spark of hope ignite in her chest. She made her way to her studio, determined to channel her pain into her art. As she picked up a brush for the first time in weeks, she heard the front door open. Jonathan entered, his tie loosened, looking as haggard as she felt. Their eyes met across the room, a chasm of unspoken words between them. Jonathan, Clara began hesitantly, I spoke with Dr. Sanders today. She thinks we should consider couples therapy. Jonathan's jaw clenched, a flicker of something, fear, anger, crossing his face. Therapy? Clara, we don't need a stranger telling us how to fix our marriage. Don't we? Clara challenged, a newfound strength in her voice. Look at us, Jonathan. We're falling apart. I'm trying to save us. Are you? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Jonathan opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again, conflict evident in his eyes. In that moment, as they stood facing each other across their once happy home, both Clara and Jonathan realized they were standing at a crossroads. The decision they made now would determine not just the future of their marriage, but the course of their lives. Little did they know, fate was about to intervene in a way neither of them could have anticipated, setting in motion a chain of events that would test their love, their loyalty, and their very understanding of what it means to be a family. Saving us? He scoffed, his voice laced with bitterness. Clara, don't you see? There might not be an us to save anymore. Clara recoiled as if she'd been struck. What are you saying, Jonathan? He ran his hands through his hair, pacing the room like a caged animal. I'm saying that maybe this isn't what I signed up for. Maybe I can't do this. Can't do what? Clara's voice rose, a tremor of anger breaking through her despair. Love me? Stand by me? For better or for worse, remember? Jonathan whirled to face her, his eyes blazing. And what about our dreams, Clara? What about the family we were supposed to have? Am I just supposed to let that go? We can still have a family, Clara pleaded, reaching for him. There are other ways, Jonathan. We could adopt, we could... It's not the same, Jonathan roared, causing Clara to flinch. Don't you understand? I want my own child, my own flesh and blood. And you can't give me that. The words hung in the air, cruel and final. Clara felt as if all the oxygen had been sucked from the room. So that's it? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Everything we've been through, everything we've built. It means nothing because I can't bear your child? Jonathan's face crumpled, a flicker of remorse crossing his features. But it was quickly replaced by a cold resolve. I can't do this anymore, Clara. I can't look at you every day and be reminded of what we've lost, what we'll never have. Clara stood frozen, watching as Jonathan moved towards the bedroom. She heard drawers opening, the sound of clothes being hastily packed. When he emerged with a suitcase, reality crashed down on her. Jonathan, please, she begged, tears streaming down her face. Don't do this. We can work through this together. Please just stay. We can talk, we can. But Jonathan was already at the door, his hand on the knob. He paused, looking back at Clara one last time. For a moment, she saw a glimmer of the man she'd fallen in love with, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. But then it was gone. I'm sorry, Clara, he said softly. I need time. I need to figure out what I want. And with that, he was gone. The door closing behind him with a finality that shattered Clara's world. She collapsed to the floor, sobs racking her body as the reality of what had just happened washed over her. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city. But for Clara, it felt as if her entire world had plunged into darkness. As night fell, Clara remained curled on the floor, her mind racing with questions. Was this really the end? Could love truly be so conditional? And what would the morning bring in this new, terrifying reality where she found herself alone? Little did she know, this painful end was merely the beginning of a journey that would test her strength, challenge her beliefs, and ultimately lead her to a truth that would change everything. It was on the 5th day that the harsh reality of her new situation truly hit her. The shrill ring of her phone cut through the silence, startling her out of her stupor. With trembling hands, she answered. Hello. Her voice was hoarse from disuse. Clara, it's Margaret. Jonathan's lawyer's crisp tone sent a chill down Clara's spine. I'm calling to inform you that Jonathan has initiated divorce proceedings. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Divorce, Clara whispered, her free hand gripping the counter for support. Yes, Margaret continued, her voice devoid of emotion. He's requesting an expedited process. Given the circumstances, he believes it's best for both parties to move forward quickly. Clara's mind reeled. But we haven't even talked. He just left. I thought he just needed time. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Margaret spoke again, there was a hint of sympathy in her voice. Clara, I'm sorry, but Jonathan has made his decision. He's asked me to handle all communication going forward. You'll be receiving the papers within the week. As the call ended, Clara sank to the floor, her phone clattering beside her. The finality of it all crashed over her in waves. This wasn't just a break, a temporary separation. Jonathan was truly leaving her, cutting her out of his life completely. Through her tears, Clara's gaze fell on a framed photo on the coffee table. It was from their wedding day, both of them beaming with love and hope for the future. With a surge of anger she didn't know she possessed, Clara grabbed the frame and hurled it across the room. The glass shattered, scattering across the floor like the broken pieces of her heart. In that moment, something shifted within Clara. The despair that had consumed her began to give way to a simmering rage. She pushed herself to her feet, her legs shaky but her resolve growing stronger with each passing second. No, she muttered to herself, her voice gaining strength. No, I won't let him do this. I won't let him throw away everything we had without a fight. With newfound determination, Clara reached for her phone again. Her fingers hovered over Jonathan's number for a moment before she scrolled past it, landing on another contact. Amelia? She said when her therapist answered. I need your help. I'm ready to fight for myself, for my life. Can you recommend a good divorce lawyer?" As she ended the call, Clara looked around the apartment, seeing it with new eyes. This wasn't the end, she realized. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one where she would rediscover her strength and her worth. Little did Clara know, as she began to gather the shattered pieces of her life, that fate had set in motion a series of events that would lead her to a truth far more shocking than anything she could have imagined. The journey ahead would test her in ways she never thought possible, but it would also lead her to a revelation that would change everything. As he entered the sleek, modern building that housed his now global tech empire, his assistant, Sarah, fell into step beside him. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwood," she said briskly. "You have a 9 a.m. with the board, followed by a conference call with Tokyo at 11. Oh, and Mr. Reeves from Acquisitions wants to discuss the Palmer Tech deal." Jonathan nodded, barely registering the words. His mind was elsewhere, as it often was on this particular date, the anniversary of his divorce from Clara. "Sarah," he said suddenly, stopping in his tracks, "clear my schedule for the afternoon. I need some time." Sarah looked at him quizzically but nodded. "Of course, sir. Is everything all right?" Jonathan forced a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Fine. Just some personal matters to attend to." As he settled into his corner office, Jonathan's gaze drifted to the New York skyline. He'd achieved everything he'd set out to do professionally. His company was thriving, his wealth had multiplied exponentially, and he was considered one of the most eligible bachelors in the city. Yet, there was an emptiness that no amount of success could fill. His phone buzzed, interrupting his reverie. It was a message from his friend, Michael. "Hey man, drinks tonight? There's someone I want you to meet. She's perfect for you, ambitious, beautiful, and definitely wants kids." Jonathan stared at the message, a mixture of emotions washing over him. He'd been on countless dates over the past 4 years, each woman carefully selected to fit the mold of what he thought he wanted. But none of them were Clara. With a heavy sigh, he typed out a response. "Not tonight, Mike. Maybe another time." As he set the phone down, his eyes landed on a small, leather-bound book hidden beneath a stack of papers. It was his old journal, one he hadn't looked at in years. With trembling hands, he pulled it out and opened it to a random page. There, in his own handwriting, were the words, "Clara painted today. The way her face lights up when she creates. It's like watching the sun rise. I can't imagine my life without her light." A lump formed in Jonathan's throat as memories flooded back. The laughter, the shared dreams, the feeling of completeness he'd had with Clara. Had he made a terrible mistake? Just then, his intercom buzzed. "Mr. Blackwood," Sarah's voice came through. "There's a Mr. Thompson here to see you. He says it's urgent." Jonathan quickly composed himself, shoving the journal back into the drawer. "Send him in," he replied, pushing thoughts of Clara to the back of his mind. As the door opened and Mr. Thompson entered, Jonathan had no idea that this meeting was about to set in motion a chain of events that would force him to confront the choices he'd made and the life he'd left behind. Little did he know, fate was not done with him and Clara just yet. The sound of giggles from the next room brought a soft smile to her face. She set down her brush and made her way to the living area, where her twins, Ethan and Emma, were engaged in an enthusiastic game of blocks. "Mama, look!" Ethan exclaimed, proudly showcasing a teetering tower. "It's as tall as the sky." Clara knelt beside him, her heart swelling with love. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. You're quite the architect." Emma tugged at her sleeve, her big brown eyes, so like Jonathan's, wide with excitement. "Can we have ice cream now, Mama? You promised." Clara laughed, running her fingers through Emma's curls. "I did, didn't I? All right, let's get cleaned up and we'll have a little treat before bed." As she helped the children wash up, Clara caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back at her was different from the one Jonathan had left 4 years ago. There were new lines around her eyes, testament to both laughter and sorrow, but there was also a strength there that hadn't existed before. The twins' unexpected arrival had been a shock, discovered mere weeks after Jonathan's departure. The irony of it all had nearly broken her, but it had also given her a reason to fight, to rebuild herself from the ground up. Later, as she tucked the twins into bed, Ethan's sleepy voice broke the quiet. "Mama, why don't we have a daddy like Billy at school?" Clara's breath caught in her throat. She'd known this question would come eventually, but it still felt like a punch to the gut. "Well, sweetheart," she began carefully, "every family is different. Some have a mommy and a daddy, some have two mommies or two daddies, and some, like us, just have one parent. But what matters most is that we love each other very much." Emma piped up, "But where is our daddy? Doesn't he love us?" Clara's heart clenched. How could she explain that their father didn't even know they existed? That she'd made the agonizing decision to keep their existence a secret, fearing that Jonathan would try to take them away, or that the knowledge would shatter the fragile peace she'd managed to build. "Your daddy," she paused, choosing her words carefully. "He's not able to be with us right now, but that doesn't mean he wouldn't love you if he knew you. You are both so very lovable." As she kissed them goodnight and retreated to the living room, Clara felt the weight of her secret pressing down on her. She picked up a framed photo of the twins on their 3rd birthday, their smiles wide and carefree. In that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. "It's time," she whispered to herself, reaching for her phone. "They deserve to know their father, and Jonathan. He deserves to know about them." With trembling fingers, she began to compose an email to Jonathan's lawyer. As she typed, she had no idea that across the city, Jonathan was grappling with his own regrets, and that fate was about to intertwine their lives once more in a way neither of them could have anticipated. The clock ticked past midnight as Clara hit send, setting in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, forgiveness, and the true meaning of family. As she stumbled into the kitchen, the pitter-patter of little feet followed. Ethan and Emma burst in, their energy a stark contrast to Clara's exhaustion. "Mama, can we have pancakes?" Emma chirped, climbing onto a stool. Clara forced a smile, trying to push aside her anxiety. "Of course, sweetie. How about blueberry?" As she mixed the batter, her mind raced. What if Jonathan rejected the twins? What if he tried to take them away? The whisk clattered into the bowl as her hands began to shake. "Mama!" Ethan's small voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "Are you okay?" Clara took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I'm fine, love. Just a little tired." The morning routine unfolded as usual: breakfast, getting dressed, packing lunches. But for Clara, every moment felt charged with an electric anticipation. As she dropped the twins off at preschool, she hugged them tighter than usual. "I love you both so much," she whispered, fighting back tears. "We love you too, Mama," they chorused, oblivious to the storm brewing in their mother's heart. Back in her car, Clara's phone pinged with a new email. Her heart leapt into her throat as she saw the sender. Margaret Lawson, Jonathan's lawyer. With trembling fingers, she opened the message. "Ms. Blackwood, I've received your email regarding the matter of your children. This is a highly sensitive situation that requires immediate attention. Mr. Blackwood has been informed, and he requests a meeting as soon as possible. Please contact my office to arrange a time. Regards, Margaret Lawson." Clara's vision blurred as tears welled up. It was real now. There was no going back. She drove to her studio in a daze, barely registering the familiar streets. As she unlocked the door, her phone rang. The caller ID made her freeze. It was a number she hadn't seen in 4 years. With a shaky breath, she answered. "Hello, Clara." Jonathan's voice, once so familiar, now sounded like a stranger's. "We need to talk. Now." The intensity in his tone sent a shiver down her spine. "Jonathan, No excuses, Clara. My office. 1 hour." The line went dead. Clara sank onto her paint-splattered stool, her mind reeling. In just 1 hour, she would face the man she once loved, the father of her children who didn't even know they existed until now. Everything was about to change. As she gathered her things, preparing for a confrontation she'd both dreaded and longed for, Clara couldn't help but wonder, Was she about to lose everything? Or was this the beginning of something she'd never dared to hope for? With a final glance at a family photo of her and the twins, Clara steeled herself for what was to come. The next few hours would determine not just her future, but the future of two innocent children who deserved to know their father. As she stepped out into the bright sunlight, Clara felt as though she was walking into the unknown, with the weight of the world on her shoulders. Clara, she turned to see Sarah, Jonathan's assistant, approaching with a look of surprise and something akin to pity. "It's been a long time. Mr. Blackwood is waiting for you in the conference room." The elevator ride to the top floor felt interminable. Clara's reflection in the mirrored walls showed a woman on the verge of breaking, but she squared her shoulders, determined to face whatever came next with dignity. The conference room door loomed before her. With a deep breath, she pushed it open. Jonathan stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to her. The years had been kind to him. His hair was slightly grayer at the temples, but he still cut an imposing figure in his tailored suit. "Jonathan," Clara said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. He turned, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. Anger, confusion, and something else, hurt, swirled in those blue depths she once knew so well. "Sit down," he said, his voice clipped. Clara complied, her legs feeling weak beneath her. Jonathan remained standing, his gaze boring into her. "Twins," he said, the word hanging heavy in the air between them. "We have twins." Clara nodded, unable to find her voice. "How could you keep this from me?" Jonathan's voice rose, anger breaking through his composed facade. "For years, Clara. For years. Clara started, her voice trembling. "I was scared, Jonathan. You left me when you thought I couldn't have children. I found out I was pregnant weeks after you were gone. I didn't know what to do." Jonathan slammed his hand on the table, making Clara jump. "What to do? You should have told me. They're my children too." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. "And what would you have done? Come back out of obligation? Tried to take them from me? I couldn't bear the thought of losing them too." A flicker of something, regret, passed over Jonathan's face. He sank into the chair opposite Clara, suddenly looking exhausted. "Tell me about them," he said softly, his anger seeming to deflate. Clara's heart clenched. She reached into her bag and pulled out a photo, sliding it across the table. "Ethan and Emma," she said. "They're beautiful, Jonathan. Smart, kind, full of life." Jonathan's hands shook as he picked up the photo. His eyes roamed over the smiling faces of two children who were undeniably his: Ethan with his strong jaw, Emma with her mother's artistic eyes. "They have your smile," Clara added gently. Jonathan looked up, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I've missed so much," he whispered. The silence that followed was heavy with regret, lost opportunities, and the weight of decisions that couldn't be undone. Finally, Jonathan spoke, his voice hoarse. "I want to meet them, Clara. I want to be part of their lives." Clara nodded, a mix of relief and apprehension washing over her. "Of course. But Jonathan, we need to do this right. For their sake." As they began to discuss the logistics of introducing Jonathan to the twins, neither of them could shake the feeling that their lives were about to change irrevocably. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with potential pitfalls and heartache, but also the possibility of healing and redemption. Outside the conference room windows, the city buzzed with life, oblivious to the emotional reunion taking place high above its streets. For Clara and Jonathan, it felt like the world had stopped spinning, leaving them suspended in a moment that would define their futures and the lives of two innocent children who were about to meet their father for the first time. A soft knock at the door interrupted his reverie. "Come in," he called, his voice hoarse from disuse. Michael, his longtime friend and confidant, entered with a concerned look. "Jonathan, it's past midnight. Have you eaten anything?" Jonathan waved him off, his eyes never leaving the tablet screen where Emma's laugh echoed from a birthday video. "I'm fine, Mike. Look at them. They're perfect." Michael sighed, settling into a chair across from Jonathan. "They are beautiful kids. But John, you need to take care of yourself too. This is a lot to process. Finally tearing his gaze away from the screen, Jonathan met his friend's worried eyes. How do I do this, Mike? How do I just become a father overnight? You don't, Michael replied gently. It's going to take time, patience. For all of you. Jonathan ran a hand through his disheveled hair, frustration evident in his voice. I've missed so much. First steps, first words. I can't get that back. No, you can't, Michael agreed. But you're here now. That's what matters. A heavy silence fell between them, broken only by the soft sounds of the twins' laughter from the tablet. Suddenly, Jonathan stood, pacing the room with nervous energy. What if they hate me, Mike? What if they can't forgive me for not being there? Michael stood, placing a steadying hand on his friend's shoulder. They're kids, John. They have an incredible capacity for love and forgiveness. Just be there for them now. Show them who you are, not who you were. Jonathan nodded, swallowing hard against the lump in his throat. I want to do right by them. By Clara too. God, I've made such a mess of everything. It's not too late to fix it, Michael assured him. But you need to be prepared. This isn't going to be easy. For any of you. As Michael left, Jonathan turned back to the window. The city sprawled out before him. In just a few days, he would meet Ethan and Emma for the first time. The thought filled him with equal parts terror and joy. He picked up his phone, hesitating for a moment before dialing Clara's number. It rang twice before her soft voice answered. Jonathan, is everything okay? I just wanted to hear your voice, he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. I'm scared, Clara. There was a pause on the other end. Then Clara's voice came through, warm and reassuring. I know, I am too, but we'll figure this out together, for their sake. As they talked into the night, sharing stories of the twins and tentatively rebuilding the bridge between them, neither Clara nor Jonathan could shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but also filled with the potential for healing, forgiveness, and the rediscovery of a love they thought was lost forever. In the quiet of the night, as the city slept around them, two hearts began to cautiously hope for a future they never dared to imagine. A future where broken pieces might just fit back together in a new, beautiful way. He spotted Clara first, her auburn hair catching the sunlight. Beside her were two small figures, and the sight of them made Jonathan's breath catch in his throat. Ethan and Emma, his children, were real and right there before him. Clara noticed him first, offering a tentative smile. Jonathan, she called softly, drawing the twins' attention. As he drew closer, Jonathan felt as if the world had narrowed to just this moment. Emma looked up at him with curious green eyes, Clara's eyes, while Ethan clutched his mother's hand, a miniature version of Jonathan himself. Hi, Jonathan managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Clara knelt down beside the twins. Ethan, Emma, remember how we talked about meeting someone special today? This is Jonathan. He's your father. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Emma tilted her head, studying Jonathan intently. You look like the man in Mama's old pictures, she said matter-of-factly. Jonathan felt a lump form in his throat. That's right, he said, kneeling down to their level. I'm very happy to meet you both. Ethan, still partially hidden behind Clara, peeked out. Where have you been? He asked, his small voice filled with a mix of curiosity and accusation that pierced Jonathan's heart. The question, so innocent yet so loaded, left Jonathan momentarily speechless. He looked to Clara, who nodded encouragingly, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. I've been away, Jonathan began, choosing his words carefully. And that was a mistake, a big mistake. But I'm here now, and if you'll let me, I'd like to get to know you both. Emma, bold and curious, took a step forward. Do you like ice cream? Mama says it's okay to have ice cream sometimes. A chuckle escaped. Jonathan, relief washing over him at the simple question. I love ice cream. What's your favorite flavor? As Emma launched into an enthusiastic description of her preferred ice cream combinations, Ethan slowly emerged from behind Clara. His interest piqued. "Do you know how to build really tall towers?" Ethan asked, his eyes wide with hope. Jonathan smiled, feeling a connection starting to form. "I do. In fact, I build very tall buildings for my job. Would you like me to show you how?" Ethan nodded eagerly, and soon Jonathan found himself sitting on the grass, surrounded by building blocks Clara had thoughtfully brought along. As he helped the twins construct an elaborate tower, stealing glances at their concentrated faces, he felt a surge of love so powerful it nearly overwhelmed him. Clara watched from nearby, her heart a tumult of emotions. Seeing Jonathan with the twins, the natural way he interacted with them, brought both joy and a tinge of sadness for the years lost. As the afternoon wore on, filled with laughter, ice cream, and tentative bonds being formed, Jonathan caught Clara's eye over the twins' heads. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. This was just the beginning of a long, complex journey, but it was a start, a chance to heal old wounds and create something beautiful from the broken pieces of their past. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, none of them could shake the feeling that their lives had irrevocably changed. The future, once so certain in its separation, now held countless possibilities. For Jonathan, Clara, Ethan, and Emma, this was the first step on a path that would challenge them, surprise them, and ultimately reshape their understanding of family and forgiveness. One evening, as he sat in his study surrounded by work documents, Jonathan's gaze drifted to a new addition on his desk, a framed photo of Ethan and Emma from their day at the park. His fingers traced their smiling faces, a deep ache settling in his chest. A soft knock interrupted his reverie. "Come in," he called, quickly wiping away the moisture that had gathered in his eyes. Michael entered, a concerned look on his face. "John, we need to talk about the Palmer Tech deal. The board is getting antsy." Jonathan nodded absently, his eyes still fixed on the photo. Michael followed his gaze and sighed, settling into the chair across from his friend. "You're a million miles away, aren't you?" Michael asked gently. Jonathan finally tore his eyes away from the picture, meeting Michael's understanding gaze. "I can't stop thinking about them, Mike. About all the time I've lost." Michael leaned forward, his voice soft but firm. "John, you can't change the past. But you're here now. That's what matters. Is it enough?" Jonathan's voice cracked with emotion. "God, Mike, I left them. I left Clara when she needed me most. How do I make up for that?" Michael was silent for a moment, carefully considering his words. "You start by being there now, every day. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight, but you show up. You prove to them, and to yourself, that you're committed to this." Jonathan ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in his voice. "But how do I balance this with the company? The board is already questioning my focus." "Then maybe it's time to reevaluate your priorities," Michael suggested gently. "What's more important to you now? The next big deal, or being there for your children's next big moment?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Jonathan stood, pacing the room as the weight of the decision before him settled on his shoulders. "I've spent my whole life building this company," he murmured, more to himself than to Michael. "But now I look at Ethan and Emma, and nothing else seems to matter as much." Michael smiled, a hint of pride in his eyes. "Then I think you have your answer, my friend." Jonathan stopped pacing, a look of determination settling on his face. "I need to make changes, Mike. Big ones. Will you help me?" "Every step of the way," Michael assured him, standing to clasp Jonathan's shoulder. "But first, I think there's someone else you need to talk to." Jonathan nodded, knowing instinctively who Michael meant. As his friend left the study, Jonathan reached for his phone, his heart racing as he dialed a familiar number. "Clara?" he said when she answered, his voice filled with a mix of nervousness and resolve. "I need to see you. There's something important we need to discuss." As he ended the call, Jonathan felt a sense of both trepidation and hope. He was standing on the precipice of a major life change, one that would affect not just him, but Clara and the twins as well. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with potential pitfalls and challenges. But for the first time in years, Jonathan felt he was moving in the right direction. Little did he know, the conversation he was about to have with Clara would set in motion a series of events that would test their newfound understanding, challenge their perceptions of each other, and ultimately redefine the meaning of family for all of them. A gentle knock on the door startled her from her reverie. Taking a deep breath to steady herself, Clara rose to answer it, knowing who she'd find on the other side. "Jonathan," she said softly as she opened the door, taking in his disheveled appearance and the intense look in his eyes. "Clara," he replied, his voice tinged with a mixture of nervousness and determination. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." As she ushered him in, Clara couldn't help but notice the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands fidgeted at his sides. Something was weighing heavily on him. "Would you like some coffee?" she offered, falling back on politeness to mask her own unease. Jonathan shook his head, pacing the small living room. "No, thank you. I need to talk to you about something important." Clara sank back onto the sofa, her heart racing. "What is it, Jonathan? Is everything okay with the twins?" He stopped pacing, turning to face her with an expression that made her breath catch. "The twins are perfect, Clara. They're everything. And that's why I need to make a change." Clara's brow furrowed in confusion. "What kind of change?" Jonathan took a deep breath, as if steeling himself. "I'm stepping down as CEO of my company." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Clara's eyes widened in shock. "What? But Jonathan, your company. It's your life's work." He moved to sit beside her on the sofa, close enough that she could sense the nervous energy radiating off him. "It was. But now I have something far more important to work on. Our family." Clara's heart skipped a beat at the word "our." "Jonathan, I don't understand. Are you sure about this?" He reached out, hesitantly taking her hand in his. The familiar touch sent a jolt through them both. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Clara. I've missed so much already. I don't want to miss another moment." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes, a mix of emotions overwhelming her. "But what will you do?" A small smile played at the corners of Jonathan's mouth. "I'll still be on the board, guiding the company's vision. But day to day, I want to be there for school runs, for homework, for skinned knees and bedtime stories. I want to be a real father to Ethan and Emma." Clara's voice trembled as she spoke. "And what about us, Jonathan? Where do I fit into this new vision of yours?" Jonathan's grip on her hand tightened, his eyes boring into hers with an intensity that took her breath away. "Clara, I know I have no right to ask this, after everything I've put you through, but I was hoping we might have a second chance too." The world seemed to stand still as Clara processed his words. Her mind raced with memories, the pain of his departure, the loneliness of raising the twins alone, but also the recent weeks of tentative co-parenting, of rediscovering the man she once loved. "Jonathan, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. But before she could continue, the shrill ring of her phone cut through the tension. Clara glanced at the caller ID, her face paling. "It's the twins' friend's mother. I have to take this." As she answered the call, Jonathan watched her face transform from concern to outright fear. Something was wrong, very wrong. "We'll be right there," Clara said urgently into the phone before hanging up and turning to Jonathan, her eyes wide with panic. "It's Ethan," she choked out. "He's had an accident. We need to go to the hospital. Now." In that moment, all thoughts of their personal drama evaporated. Jonathan sprang into action, grabbing his car keys. "I'll drive. Let's go." As they rushed out the door, the weight of their unfinished conversation hung between them. But now, faced with a crisis involving their son, they were united in their fear and their love for their children. The night ahead would test them in ways they never imagined, forcing them to confront not just Ethan's uncertain fate, but the true depth of their feelings for each other and the family they had created. Emma, who had been picked up on the way to the hospital, dozed fitfully in a chair nearby, her small face creased with worry even in sleep. Clara's eyes darted between her daughter and the double doors leading to the emergency room, her heart racing with each passing minute. "What's taking so long?" Jonathan muttered, his voice hoarse with tension. "It's been hours." Clara squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his presence. "The doctors said they needed to run more tests." "That's good, right? It means they're being thorough." Jonathan nodded, but the fear in his eyes betrayed his calm exterior. "I can't lose him, Clara. I've only just found him." The raw emotion in his voice made Clara's breath catch. She turned to face him fully, cupping his cheek with her free hand. "Listen to me, Jonathan. Ethan is strong. He's a fighter just like his father. We have to believe he'll be okay." As Jonathan leaned into her touch, a single tear escaping down his cheek, the double doors swung open. Dr. Patel, the pediatric surgeon who had been overseeing Ethan's care, approached them with a grave expression. Clara and Jonathan stood as one, their hearts pounding in unison. "Doctor," Clara managed, her voice barely above a whisper, "how is he?" Dr. Patel's eyes softened with compassion. "Ethan's condition is stable but critical. The fall caused some internal bleeding that we've managed to control. But what?" Jonathan pressed, his grip on Clara's hand tightening. The doctor took a deep breath. "There's swelling in his brain. We need to perform surgery to relieve the pressure. But given Ethan's age and the delicate nature of the procedure, there are risks." Clara felt her knees go weak, and Jonathan's arm instinctively wrapped around her waist, supporting her. "What kind of risks?" she asked, dreading the answer. "In the worst-case scenario," Dr. Patel explained gently, "there could be long-term cognitive effects. But without the surgery, the swelling could cause irreparable damage." The weight of the decision settled on Clara and Jonathan like a physical force. They looked at each other, a lifetime of emotions passing between them in that single glance. "We need to do the surgery," Jonathan said firmly, looking to Clara for confirmation. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, do whatever you need to do to save our son." As Dr. Patel left to prepare for the operation, Clara and Jonathan sank back into their seats, the gravity of the situation hitting them anew. Emma stirred, sensing the tension in the air. "Mama? Daddy?" she mumbled sleepily. "Is Ethan okay?" Clara gathered Emma into her arms, holding her close. "The doctors are doing everything they can to help your brother, sweetheart." Jonathan knelt in front of them, his hand resting on Emma's back. "We need to be strong for Ethan now. Can you do that, princess?" Emma nodded solemnly, her small face set with determination. "I'll be the strongest." As they huddled together, a family united in crisis, Clara and Jonathan's eyes met over Emma's head. In that moment, all the pain of their past, all the uncertainty of their future, seemed to fall away. What mattered now was the present, their children, their love, and the long night ahead. "We'll get through this," Jonathan whispered, his voice filled with a fierce determination. "Together." Clara nodded, drawing strength from his words and the warmth of their embrace. As the night deepened and the hospital bustled around them, they settled in for the longest wait of their lives, their hearts beating as one, united in hope and fear for their son. Clara paced the length of the room, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if trying to hold her fraying nerves together. Jonathan watched her, his own anxiety evident in the deep lines etched across his forehead. "Clara," he said softly, reaching out to catch her hand as she passed. "Come sit down. You need to rest." She shook her head, her eyes wild with fear and fatigue. "I can't, Jonathan. If I stop moving, I'll... Her voice broke, and Jonathan was on his feet in an instant, pulling her into his arms. Clara collapsed against his chest, her body shaking with silent sobs. "Shoo," Jonathan murmured, stroking her hair. "It's okay. Let it out." For a moment, they stood there, clinging to each other as if they were the only solid things in a world that had suddenly become terrifyingly uncertain. "I'm so scared," Clara whispered into his shirt. What if he doesn't make it? Jonathan tightened his grip on her, his own voice thick with emotion. He will. He has to. Ethan is strong, Clara. He's got your spirit and my stubbornness. He'll pull through. Clara pulled back slightly, looking up into Jonathan's face. The love and concern she saw there made her breath catch. When did you become the optimistic one? A small, sad smile tugged at Jonathan's lips. Someone once told me that hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul. I think I'm finally starting to understand what that means. Before Clara could respond, the doors to the surgical wing swung open. Dr. Patel emerged, his surgical cap still on, his expression unreadable. Clara and Jonathan turned as one, their hearts pounding in unison. Emma stirred, sensing the shift in energy. Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, Dr. Patel began, his voice gentle but professional. Ethan's surgery is complete. And, Jonathan pressed, his arm tightening around Clara's waist. Dr. Patel took a deep breath. The procedure was successful in relieving the pressure on Ethan's brain. However, Clara felt her knees go weak. However what, doctor? The next 24 hours will be critical, Dr. Patel explained. We won't know the full extent of any potential damage until Ethan wakes up. But he will wake up, right? Emma's small voice piped up, startling them all. She had woken up and moved to stand beside her parents, her little hand slipping into Clara's. Dr. Patel knelt down to Emma's level, his eyes softening. We're doing everything we can to make sure your brother wakes up, sweetheart. He's a very brave boy. As the doctor stood to leave, promising to update them as soon as there was any change, Clara, Jonathan, and Emma huddled together, a family united in both fear and hope. Can we see him? Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Patel nodded. Briefly, he's in recovery now. I'll have a nurse come get you in a few minutes. As they waited, tension thrumming through their bodies, Jonathan looked down at Clara and Emma, a sudden realization washing over him. This was his family. Imperfect, wounded, but unbreakably bound by love. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. I love you, he said softly. The words meant for both Clara and Emma. Both of you, all of you, we're going to get through this. Clara's eyes met his, a glimmer of hope shining through her tears. Together, she whispered back. As a nurse appeared to lead them to Ethan's room, they moved as one, each step bringing them closer to whatever the future held. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges they couldn't yet imagine. But in that moment, united by love and bound by hope, they felt ready to face whatever came next. Clara's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob. Jonathan's arm tightened around her waist, steadying her as they approached the bed. Emma, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity, clung tightly to Clara's hand. "Oh, my baby?" Clara whispered, reaching out to gently stroke Ethan's cheek, careful not to disturb any of the equipment surrounding him. Jonathan's throat tightened as he took in the scene. This was his son, the little boy he'd only just begun to know, fighting for his life. The enormity of it all threatened to overwhelm him. "Daddy!" Emma's small voice broke through his thoughts. "Why isn't Ethan waking up?" Jonathan knelt down beside her, his voice gentle but strained. "Ethan's body needs time to heal, sweetheart. The doctors gave him special medicine to help him sleep so he can get better." Emma nodded solemnly, her gaze fixed on her twin brother. Can I hold his hand?" Clara and Jonathan exchanged a glance, their hearts breaking at the innocence of the request. Clara nodded, helping Emma to carefully take Ethan's hand in hers. "Ethan," Emma said, her voice suddenly strong and clear. "It's me, Emma. You need to wake up, okay? We have so many things to do. Remember, you promised we'd build the biggest sandcastle ever this summer." As Emma continued to talk to her brother, recounting their shared dreams and plans, Clara turned to Jonathan, burying her face in his chest. He held her close, his own tears falling silently into her hair. "He looks so small," Clara murmured, her voice muffled against Jonathan's shirt. So fragile. Jonathan swallowed hard, forcing strength into his voice. He's stronger than he looks, Clara. He's got your spirit, remember? Clara pulled back slightly, looking up into Jonathan's face. The love and determination she saw there gave her a flicker of hope. And your stubbornness? She added with a watery smile. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, watching their children, one sleeping, fighting for life, the other whispering encouragement, something shifted between them. The pain of their past, the uncertainty of their future, seemed to fade away in the face of this moment. Suddenly, a small movement caught their attention. Ethan's fingers had twitched ever so slightly in Emma's grasp. "Mama! Daddy!" Emma exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. Ethan moved. "I felt it." Clara and Jonathan rushed to the bedside, hope surging through them. Clara pressed the call button for the nurse, her heart racing. "Ethan?" Jonathan called softly, leaning close to his son's ear. "Ethan, can you hear me?" "It's Dad. We're all here, son. We're waiting for you." For a moment, the room was silent save for the steady beep of the monitors. Then, almost imperceptibly, Ethan's eyelids fluttered. Clara gasped, her hand tightening on Jonathan's arm. "That's it, sweetheart," she encouraged, her voice thick with emotion. "Come back to us." As they watched with bated breath, Ethan's eyes slowly, painfully, began to open. His gaze was unfocused at first, but then it settled on the faces surrounding him, his sister, his mother, and the father he was just beginning to know. "Mom?" Ethan's voice was barely a whisper, raspy and weak, but to Clara and Jonathan, it was the most beautiful sound in the world. Tears of joy and relief streamed down Clara's face as she leaned in to kiss Ethan's forehead. "We're here, baby. You're going to be okay." Jonathan, overwhelmed with emotion, could only nod, squeezing Ethan's hand gently. As the medical team rushed in, alerted by the call button, Clara and Jonathan stepped back, arms around each other and Emma. They watched as the doctors examined Ethan, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. In that moment, as they stood united as a family, they knew that regardless of what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The road to recovery would be long and uncertain, but they had found something precious in this crucible of fear and love, a second chance at being a family. The future, once so fraught with pain and regret, now held the promise of healing, not just for Ethan, but for all of them. As the dawn broke outside the hospital windows, it seemed to herald not just a new day, but a new beginning for the Blackwood family. On a particularly sunny afternoon, Clara sat by Ethan's bedside, watching as he struggled through another physical therapy session. His progress had been slow but steady, each small victory celebrated like a major triumph. "That's it, Ethan," the therapist encouraged as Ethan gripped a small rubber ball, his face scrunched in concentration. "Just a little tighter." Clara leaned forward, her heart racing as she watched her son's fingers slowly close around the ball. "You can do it, sweetheart," she whispered, willing strength into him. Suddenly, Ethan's grip tightened, and he managed to lift the ball a few inches off the bed. A triumphant smile broke across his face, lighting up the room. "Mom, did you see?" he exclaimed, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. Clara's eyes welled with tears of joy. "I saw, baby. You did it. I'm so proud of you." As the therapist wrapped up the session, praising Ethan's progress, Jonathan arrived, Emma in tow. The little girl rushed to her brother's side, her backpack still on. "Ethan, guess what? I got an A on my science project." Emma bounced excitedly. "And Ms. Johnson said to tell you she can't wait to have you back in class." Ethan's smile faltered slightly. "I don't know if I'll be able to go back to school," he mumbled, his eyes downcast. Jonathan moved to sit on the edge of the bed, his hand resting gently on Ethan's shoulder. "Hey, champ, one day at a time, remember? You're making amazing progress." Clara watched the interaction, her heart swelling with love for her family. The past few weeks had been challenging, but they had also brought them closer together than ever before. Jonathan had been true to his word, stepping back from his company to be there for every moment of Ethan's recovery. As Emma chattered away about her day at school, Clara caught Jonathan's eye. The look they shared was filled with a mix of exhaustion, hope, and something deeper, a rekindled connection that had been strengthening with each passing day. Later that evening, after Emma had been picked up by Clara's mother for a sleepover, Clara and Jonathan found themselves alone in the quiet hospital room. Ethan had drifted off to sleep, the day's exertions taking their toll. "He's getting stronger every day," Jonathan murmured, his eyes fixed on their sleeping son. Clara nodded, leaning into Jonathan's side. "It's amazing. A month ago, we weren't sure if he'd—" Her voice trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Jonathan's arm tightened around her waist. "But he did," he said firmly. "He's here, he's fighting, and he's going to be okay." Clara turned to face Jonathan, her eyes searching his. "We're going to be okay too, aren't we?" she asked softly, the question laden with meaning beyond just Ethan's recovery. Jonathan's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb gently wiping away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Yes," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We are." As their lips met in a tender kiss, years of hurt and misunderstanding seemed to melt away. It wasn't a magical fix. They both knew there was still much to work through, but it was a promise. A promise of a future together, of healing not just for Ethan but for their whole family. The moment was interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Dr. Patel entered, his face unreadable. "Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood," he said, his tone serious. "I have Ethan's latest test results. There's something we need to discuss." Clara and Jonathan froze, their hearts pounding in unison. Just when things seemed to be looking up, were they about to face another setback? As they turned to face the doctor, hands clasped tightly together, they steeled themselves for whatever news was to come, ready to face it as a united front. The air in the room grew thick with tension as Dr. Patel prepared to deliver news that could potentially change everything once again for the Blackwood family. "What is it, doctor?" Jonathan managed to ask, his voice strained. "Is Ethan okay?" Dr. Patel took a deep breath, his eyes moving between Clara and Jonathan before settling on the sleeping form of Ethan. "Ethan's latest scans show something unexpected," he began carefully. "The swelling in his brain has reduced significantly, which is excellent news." Clara let out a small sigh of relief, but the doctor's tone told her there was more to come. "But," she prompted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But," Dr. Patel continued, "we've noticed some unusual activity in areas of his brain that were previously dormant. It's not something we typically see in cases like this." Jonathan leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What does that mean exactly? Is it dangerous?" The doctor shook his head slowly. "Not dangerous, no. In fact, it could potentially be quite remarkable. You see, these areas of the brain are associated with heightened cognitive functions, problem-solving, pattern recognition, even creativity." Clara's eyes widened, her gaze darting between the doctor and her sleeping son. "Are you saying that Ethan's brain is improving?" Dr. Patel nodded, a hint of excitement creeping into his professional demeanor. "In a manner of speaking, yes. It's as if the trauma and subsequent healing have unlocked potential in Ethan's brain that we don't typically see. Of course, we'll need to run more tests to fully understand what's happening. But what?" Jonathan pressed, his arm instinctively wrapping around Clara's shoulders. The doctor leaned in, his voice low and filled with cautious wonder. "But if what we're seeing is correct, Ethan may develop cognitive abilities far beyond what we'd consider normal for a child his age. He could be, for lack of a better term, gifted in ways we can't yet fully comprehend." The room fell silent as Clara and Jonathan absorbed this information. Their minds raced with the implications, the potential, the challenges, the unknown path that lay ahead for their son. "How?" Clara started, her voice cracking with emotion. "How do we handle this? What does Ethan need from us now?" Dr. Patel's expression softened. "Love, support, and patience, just as you've been giving him. We'll monitor his progress closely and adjust his therapy as needed. But most importantly, treat him as you always have. He's still your Ethan." As the doctor stood to leave, promising to return with more details in the morning, Clara and Jonathan turned to each other, a whirlwind of emotions passing between them. "Jonathan," Clara whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "What does this mean for him? For us?" Jonathan pulled her close, his own eyes misting over as he gazed at their sleeping son. "It means we have an even more extraordinary little boy than we realized," he murmured. "And we'll face whatever comes next together." Just then, Ethan stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Mom? Dad?" he called out softly, his voice still thick with sleep. They were at his bedside in an instant, their hands gentle as they smoothed his hair and held his small fingers. "We're here, sweetheart," Clara soothed, her voice filled with love. "Did something happen?" Ethan asked, his eyes moving between his parents' faces, picking up on their emotional state with an acuity that suddenly seemed heightened. Jonathan smiled, squeezing Ethan's hand. "Nothing bad, champ. In fact, the doctors think you might have some pretty amazing things ahead of you." Ethan's brow furrowed in confusion, but before he could ask more questions, a nurse entered to check his vitals. As Clara and Jonathan stepped back to allow her to work, they exchanged a look filled with determination, love, and a touch of awe. Whatever lay ahead for Ethan and their family, they would navigate it together. The journey would undoubtedly be challenging, filled with unknowns and potential obstacles. But as they stood there, united as a family, they felt a surge of hope and excitement for the future. The Blackwood family was about to embark on an extraordinary adventure, one that would test their bonds, challenge their perceptions, and ultimately redefine what it meant to be gifted, not just in mind, but in heart and spirit as well. On a crisp autumn morning, Clara stood in the kitchen, preparing breakfast while Jonathan sat at the table, poring over a stack of documents. The sound of rapid footsteps on the stairs announced the arrival of the twins. "Mom! Dad!" Ethan's voice rang out, filled with an enthusiasm that still caught them off guard sometimes. "I figured it out." Clara turned from the stove, a spatula in hand, as Ethan burst into the kitchen, Emma hot on his heels. "Figured what out, sweetheart?" Ethan's eyes were bright with excitement, a far cry from the pale, weak boy who had left the hospital just a few months ago. "The problem in Dad's contract, the one he was struggling with last night." Jonathan's head snapped up, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Ethan, what are you talking about? Those documents are confidential and far too complex for—" Section 3, Paragraph 2. Ethan interrupted, his words coming out in a rush. "The language is ambiguous, leaving room for misinterpretation. If you reword it to specify the exact terms of the intellectual property rights, you'll close the loophole that could lead to future disputes." A heavy silence fell over the kitchen. Clara and Jonathan exchanged a look of shock and awe, while Emma beamed proudly at her brother. "Ethan," Jonathan said slowly, his voice a mixture of pride and disbelief, "how did you even see these documents? And more importantly, how did you understand them?" Ethan shrugged, suddenly looking uncertain. I just glanced at them when I came down for water last night. The words just made sense to me. Is that not normal?" Clara moved to kneel beside her son, her heart racing. "Sweetheart, it's not that it's not normal. It's just extraordinary. Most adults wouldn't be able to understand those documents, let alone spot a legal loophole." Emma piped up, her voice filled with admiration. "See? I told you were a superhero now, Ethan." Jonathan stood, moving to join his family. He placed a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and concern. "Son, this gift you have, it's amazing, but it also means we need to be extra careful. Not everyone will understand or appreciate your abilities." Ethan nodded solemnly, his young face suddenly serious. "I know, Dad. I can feel it sometimes. The way people look at me when I say something they don't expect. It's like they're scared or confused." Clara pulled both twins into a tight hug, her eyes meeting Jonathan's over their heads. The unspoken question hung between them. How do we protect him? How do we nurture this gift without isolating him from the world? As if reading their thoughts, Ethan spoke up, his voice muffled against Clara's shoulder. I don't want to be different. I just want to be me. Jonathan knelt down, joining the family embrace. And that's exactly who you'll be, champ. We'll figure this out together as a family. As they sat down to breakfast, the conversation turned to lighter topics, but the undercurrent of change was palpable. Clara and Jonathan knew that the path ahead would be challenging. They would need to navigate a world that might not be ready for a child like Ethan, while also ensuring that Emma didn't feel overshadowed by her brother's extraordinary abilities. Later that evening, after the twins had gone to bed, Clara and Jonathan sat on the porch swing, the cool night air a welcome respite from the emotional intensity of the day. We need a plan, Jonathan said softly, his arm around Clara's shoulders. A way to protect him, to give him a normal childhood while also nurturing his gifts. Clara nodded, leaning into his embrace. And we need to make sure Emma feels just as special and loved. This affects her too. As they sat there, discussing possibilities and concerns, neither of them could shake the feeling that their family was on the brink of something momentous. The future stretched out before them, filled with unknowns, but also with the promise of extraordinary discoveries. Little did they know that Ethan's abilities were just the beginning. The coming years would test their family in ways they could never have imagined, pushing the boundaries of love, sacrifice, and the very nature of human potential. As the stars twinkled overhead, Clara and Jonathan held each other close, drawing strength from their rekindled bond. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united in their love for each other and their extraordinary children. Suddenly, Ethan burst into the room, his eyes wide with excitement. Mom, Dad, I had another dream last night. Clara and Jonathan exchanged a quick, concerned glance. Ethan's dreams had become a topic of both fascination and worry over the past few months. They weren't ordinary dreams, but vivid visions that often seemed to predict future events with uncanny accuracy. What did you see this time, sweetheart? Clara asked, trying to keep her voice calm as she set a plate of pancakes on the table. Ethan took a deep breath, his words tumbling out in a rush. I saw a big building with lots of computers. There were people in white coats, and they were talking about something called Project Nexus. They seemed really worried, like something had gone wrong. Jonathan leaned forward, his brow furrowed. Did you hear any names or see any specific details? Ethan closed his eyes, concentrating hard. I think I saw a logo. It looked like a tree with circuit board lines running through it. And I heard someone say, Dr. Reeves needs to be informed immediately. The color drained from Jonathan's face. He shot a meaningful look at Clara, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Emma, who had been listening intently, piped up. That sounds like the company Dad used to work for. Isn't Dr. Reeves your old business partner? Jonathan forced a smile. Good memory, Em. Yes, Dr. Reeves and I worked together years ago. Clara quickly changed the subject, ushering the twins to finish their breakfast and get ready for school. As soon as they were out of earshot, she turned to Jonathan, her voice low and urgent. Jonathan, this can't be a coincidence. Ethan's dreams have been too accurate lately. If he's seeing something about your old company. Jonathan nodded, his face grim. I know. If Project Nexus is what I think it is and something's gone wrong, it could be catastrophic. We need to find out more. Clara's eyes widened with concern. But how? You left that world behind, and we can't risk exposing Ethan's abilities. Jonathan stood, pacing the kitchen. I still have some contacts. I'll make some discreet inquiries. In the meantime, we need to keep a closer eye on Ethan's dreams. They might be our only window into what's happening. As they heard the twins coming back downstairs, Clara and Jonathan quickly composed themselves. They shared a look of determination and worry as they prepared to send their children off to school. Later that evening, after the twins were in bed, Clara found Jonathan in his study, hunched over his computer. Any news? She asked softly. Jonathan looked up. his face etched with lines of worry. Nothing concrete, but there are whispers. Something big is happening at Neurotech, and it's got a lot of people scared. Clara sank into the chair across from him. What do? We can't just sit back and wait for Ethan to have another dream. Jonathan reached across the desk, taking her hand in his. We might not have a choice. Whatever's happening, it's bigger than us. We need to protect our family first. As they sat there, the weight of the unknown pressing down on them, neither Clara nor Jonathan could shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something that would change their lives forever. Ethan's gift, once a source of wonder, now seemed to be drawing them into a world of danger and intrigue they never asked for. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the leaves of the old oak tree in their backyard. It was as if nature itself was whispering a warning of the storm to come. The Blackwoods were about to be thrust into the center of a mystery that would test their love, their loyalty, and their very understanding of the world around them. As Clara and Jonathan held each other's gaze across the desk, they silently renewed their vow to protect their children at all costs. Little did they know that the choices they would soon face would push them to the very limits of that promise. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, counting down to a future that was as thrilling as it was terrifying. The Blackwood family stood on the precipice of an adventure that would redefine not just their lives, but potentially the fate of the world itself. On Friday evening, as Clara was preparing dinner, Ethan burst into the kitchen, his face pale and his eyes wide with fear. "Mom!" he gasped. "I had another dream, but this time it was different. It was so real, so scary." Clara immediately turned off the stove and knelt in front of her son, her heart racing. "It's okay, sweetheart. Take a deep breath and tell me what you saw." Ethan's voice trembled as he spoke. "I saw a room full of people connected to machines. They looked wrong, like they were in pain, and there was a man there watching them. He looked like the photos of Dr. Reeves in Dad's old office, but older, scarier." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. She called out, "Jonathan, you need to hear this." Jonathan rushed in from his study, his face etched with concern. As Ethan recounted his dream, Jonathan's expression grew increasingly grim. "There's more," Ethan continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I heard Dr. Reeves say something about the next phase and expanding the network. And then he looked right at me, Mom, like he could see me in the dream. He smiled, and it was terrifying." Clara pulled Ethan into a tight embrace, meeting Jonathan's worried gaze over their son's head. The implications of this dream were too serious to ignore. "Jonathan," Clara said, her voice steady despite her fear, "we can't keep pretending this isn't happening. We need to do something." Jonathan nodded, his jaw set with determination. "You're right. I think it's time I paid a visit to my old friend, Dr. Reeves." "No!" Emma's voice startled them all. She had been standing in the doorway, unnoticed. "Dad, you can't go. What if it's dangerous?" Jonathan knelt beside Emma, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes, sweetheart, we have to face danger to protect the people we love." Clara stood, her mind racing. "If you're going, I'm coming with you. We're in this together, remember?" As they discussed their plans, the air in the room grew thick with a mixture of fear and determination. They decided to leave the twins with Clara's sister for a few days while they investigated Neurotech and Dr. Reeves. Later that night, as Clara and Jonathan packed their bags, Ethan appeared in their doorway, his young face uncharacteristically serious. "Mom, Dad," he said, his voice stronger than they'd ever heard it. "I know you're trying to protect us, but I think I'm supposed to go with you. My dreams are getting stronger, more frequent. What if you need me there?" Clara and Jonathan exchanged a look of surprise and concern. The thought of bringing Ethan into potential danger made their hearts ache, but they couldn't deny the logic of his words. "Ethan," Jonathan began, kneeling to meet his son's eyes, "if you come with us, you have to promise to do exactly as we say, no matter what. This isn't a game or an adventure. It could be very dangerous." Ethan nodded solemnly. "I promise, Dad. I feel like I have to be there. like it's important somehow. As they resumed packing, now for 3 instead of 2, the weight of their decision hung heavy in the air. They were about to embark on a journey that could change everything, not just for their family, but potentially for the world. Outside, the night sky was unusually clear, the stars twinkling with an intensity that seemed to mirror the gravity of the moment. As Clara, Jonathan, and Ethan prepared for bed, each lost in their own thoughts and fears, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into a story much bigger than themselves. The Blackwood family was about to face their greatest challenge yet, one that would test their bonds, their courage, and the true extent of Ethan's extraordinary abilities. As they drifted off to sleep, the future loomed before them, a tapestry of uncertainty woven with threads of hope, fear, and the unbreakable strength of